Hello and welcome back to the second part of the Git with Unity tutorial series. In the last video, we went through the basic process of setting up a project, adding the git ignore, creating the empty git repository, and we also learned how to stage, commit, and push our changes to a remote repository. We also learned how to set up a remote repository on GitLab. And in this particular video, we are going to be looking at bringing data from GitLab to our local repository. So in the previous section, it was all about creating a repository and pushing the changes up to the cloud or up to the Git, which is on the cloud here. And in this video, we are going to be looking at how do we bring down changes that are done from the cloud into our local repository. So for that, we will go down here to this new set of drawings and we will go one by one with what the steps are. So the first step is we have a remote repository here, and we will first understand what is a git clone. So remember that once we push our changes to the remote repository, everything is here. So you can also see, if I go to the history here, the 3 commits that we made in the previous video. So everything is stored right here on the cloud Git right now. So we will go back to where our project has been created, which is here. And I'm just going to delete the repository. So if you see here, we have our entire project. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this permanently. So the project has gone completely from my computer, so there is absolutely no trace of it. Let's go back to the Git website and you will see here the project that we have created. And I will go back to the main page. And if you see here, you will see a drop down here that says code. We will select that and we will copy the clone with HTTPS link. And what we are doing now is we are performing a git clone operation. What is a git clone operation? If I go back to the chart here, you will see we have a remote repository, and if it is a new repository that we are bringing down for the first time into our system, we are going to run a git clone operation with the link that we just copied. So you can see that the project has completely been deleted now from my computer and there is absolutely no trace of it. Going back to the GitLab link, you will see here that the project we have created, and if I go to the history section, you will see the 3 commits that we made. So on the cloud right now, or on the GitLab, we have the entire project stored here with all its branches and all the changes that have been made. And the entire project itself is stored right here. So we will now do something called a git clone. For that, we will go here in the code section, copy this clone with HTTPS link. And going back to the chart here, what is a git clone? A git clone basically means if you have a new project on the Git that you want to pull down to your system for the first time, we run a git clone. And what that does is it clones the repository itself and creates a local copy in our system. So let's right click and let's select open git bash here, and we will just run the command git clone and paste the link that we copied earlier. And you can see here that the cloning has now finished, and it will create a folder with the exact same name as your repository name. And if you enter this folder, you will see that the project is back along with the .git folder, which contains all the changes and all the details that we had done previously. So I can open git bash inside this folder, and you can see we are on the master branch, and I can just do a git log, and you can see the 3 commits that we had done earlier are back, and all the changes that we have done are back. Now that we have cloned our project with the master branch on our local system, if I go back to the drawing here, you will see that we have created the local repository on running git clone. So we ran the git clone and we got our local repository. And the next step that happens is a git checkout, and it checks out a local branch. So right now in our project, if you see, we only have one branch, which is the master, and that is tagged here as the default branch. And we have checked out the default branch. What is a git checkout? A git checkout is basically an operation that you run when you want to check out a branch that is here. And right now we have only one branch, so we will get into what is a branch now. So going down here, you can see that a branch is basically a copy of the project that you are working on, and you can make commits on a particular branch. So right now on the master branch here, we have made 3 commits, and if I were to do something else and push my changes, it's going to get pushed to the master branch as one more commit. Now we just have one branch. So if I create a new branch now, what happens? So let me just duplicate this and put it to the side here, and let's give this a name, my new branch. So whenever you create a new branch from a particular branch, so let's say we have the master here, and I create a new branch from the master branch called my new branch, it creates an exact copy of this branch. And in order to start working on this branch, you do a checkout operation. You can say git checkout my new branch, and you will get this particular copy, which contains all the previous info of the branch that you just created from, and you can continue working on this branch. So if I make some new changes and make a commit, so you can see here I can make a new commit. We can call this commit 4, and you can continue working on this new branch without affecting the master branch. And alternatively, somebody else can be working on this branch. So let's say he can make separate commits here, and maybe we can call this commit 5. And then in the future, you can combine these 2 branches so that all of these commits come onto one branch, which is called a git merge. We will look at that maybe in the next or a couple of videos ahead. It is coming very soon in this series. So this is how the basic concept of a branch works. So you create a copy of the branch that you are working on by creating a new branch, and you can continue to make changes on this branch without affecting the other branches, and ultimately you can merge them back. So let's create our first branch now, and if I go back to the GitLab here, you will see the master branch, and you will see a plus button here. So if you click on the plus button, you will find the option to create a new branch. Keep in mind that now I'm creating a new branch on the system, on the cloud, but you can also alternatively do that on your local repository and push it to the cloud. So let's actually do that. If I go to my new, a newly cloned project now, I can just open it up. And to see all the branches that are already on my repository right now, you can just use the command git branch -a. And what that does is it lists all the branches that are in your project at the moment. So let us start by creating our first Git branch now, and we will do that locally on our local repository. So going back to the chart here, we are doing it on our local repository, and we will push this new branch to the remote repository. So let's do that. I will open Git bash here, and you can see there is only one branch here called master. And to list all your branches, remember this command, it is git branch -a, and this will list all the branches that are on our project right here. So you have the master branch and you have the remote, the head. So let's not worry about this for now, but keep in mind that there is only one branch right now, and that is the master branch. So I will create a new branch now on my local repository, and the command for that is git checkout -b, and that means new branch, and we will give it a branch name. So let's call this my new branch 1. We'll call my new branch 1, and we will hit enter. So you will see a message pop up here that says switch to a new branch, my new branch 1, and the brackets here, instead of master, it says my new branch 1. And now if I do a git branch -a, which means list all the branches, you will see that a new branch has been created called my new branch 1, and it is listed here. So let's open up our project, and before that, if we also do a git log on my new branch 1, you will see the same 3 commits as the master branch, because we made an exact copy of the master branch when we created a branch from that. So you will see the same 3 commits. Perfect. So let's open up our project and make a commit on our new branch now. I have my project open here, and as you can see, I've already made a commit before this. And if I go back to the project folder and open git bash, if I do a git log, you can see that I've already made a commit here, and this is just for demonstration, but we will make another commit. So I'm going to create a new script. Let's call this test script 3. And I'm also going to I have a scene here that I've created with some cubes in it. So I'm going to add a few more of these cubes. Nothing too fancy, just some modifications on the scene. And now I'm comfortable with these changes, so I'm going to close it up. And always remember to keep your project closed when you perform git operations. And on the git bash, let's close that, and I will open a fresh git bash, and I'm going to run git status. And here you can see that I've modified a scene called cubes, and I've added a new file called testscript3. And what we are going to do now is we are going to stage these files by running the command git add dot. You don't have to run the git status every time. This is just a command that lets you see what changes you've done. So if I run git status again, this is just to show you. So you can see that one file has been modified and a new file has been added along with its meta file. So this is the change that we have done, and as soon as we stage our changes, we are also going to commit it. We are going to do a git commit -m, which means message, and we will say modified cube scene added test script 3. So once the commit is done, we will have to push it to the remote repository, and the way we do that is we do git push. So now that our changes have been pushed on my new branch 1 to the remote repository, we will go back to GitLab, and on the project link here, if I open this branches drop down, you will see that my new branch 1 has been created. And if I open up my new branch 1, you will see in the history section the 2 extra commits that we have added on top of the 3 that is part of the parent branch. So I added a new cube scene and created a new test script in the first commit, and in this particular commit we just modified the same scene and added another new script, and it is these changes that are visible here. Now we will do another exercise, which is till now what we did was we created our branch locally, we created a new branch locally, and we pushed it up to the repository. In this case, we are going to be creating a new branch directly on the remote repository, and then we'll be updating our local repository with this particular change. So let's say another developer is working on this project and he creates a new branch, which I will do now by clicking the plus button in the project section here and selecting new branch. I'm going to call this branch my branch 2, and we will create this branch from my new branch 1. So let's create this branch. And as soon as I create this branch, you will see that it opens up here, and if I go to the history section, you will see it has the same number of commits, the same commits as my new branch 1, which is the parent branch. Now, if I go back to the project folder and open git bash, and if I search for the branches in my project, if let's say I search for git branch -a, which is the command to see all the branches on our local repository, you will see that there is only my new branch 1 and master, and ignore this my new branch 2. This is something that I was doing earlier, and we can ignore that for now. But you can see my new branch 1 and master are the only 2 branches here, but we have created another branch called my branch 2, which is not visible here. In order for that to be visible, we will need to run a particular command called git fetch. Now what is a git fetch? A git fetch is basically a command that you run in order to pull down the changes that have happened on the remote repository down to your local repository. So as soon as I do git fetch, any new branches that have been created by anybody else here will be visible. So you can see there is a message here that says new branch, and it says my branch 2, and this is the remote link of the same branch. So now that we have fetched the branch, we can check out this particular branch. So we will run the command git fetch git checkout, and we will type in my branch 2. Keep in mind that we are not going to put -b here, because you use -b only when you create a new branch on your local repository. This is a branch that we have already fetched from the remote, and we are just switching to this branch. So I will click on that, and you get the message switch to a new branch, my branch 2. And of course, if I do git log, you will see the same commits. Now that we have performed a git fetch operation to get the remote changes onto our local repository, it is also a good time now to understand the next type of operation, which is a git pull. Now if I go to the repository, if I go to the folder here, if I go to my project folder and open git bash and run git pull, you will see that it's going to say already up to date, and that is because on our remote repository here we are on my branch 2. On my branch 2, we already have all of these commits in our local repository. So that is why it says already up to date. But what exactly is a git pull? Let's say, now coming back to the diagrams here, if I just select this and duplicate it, and let's say developer 1 is working on this and developer 2 is working on this, and let me just move that down. Yeah. So let's say developer 1 is working on this and developer 2 is working on my new branch, which is the exact same branch. So each one of them has a copy of this branch on their system. So now let's say developer 2 makes some changes to his project and added an extra commit. So he did a commit 5. Sorry about that. Let's say the developer did another commit here called commit 5. Now this means that though developer 1 and 2 have the same copy of the branch on their local repositories, developer 2 is one commit ahead of developer 1, and let's say he pushes these changes to the Git repository, and instead of the 5 commits you see here, another commit has been added, and the other developer does not have these changes yet. So what the other developer would do, what developer 1 would do is he would run a git pull, which makes sure that he will also get the commit 5 on his local repository. And git pull will always instantly update your project with the latest commits, and this is the reason why we keep our projects closed when we run git operations, because the files are updated as soon as you run these commands, and it is generally not a good idea to have your project open, because you might be getting scripts, you might be getting assets, and it is going to cause Unity to re-import these things as they are being added to your project directory. And that is just a basic description of how git pull works. So in a way you can also run git fetch or git pull alternatively, but keep in mind that git fetch will not update your repository, so it will only bring in the changes, it will tell you that these changes exist, but it is not going to write the files on your project until you do a git pull. So far we have covered how to create a branch on our local repository, push it up to the remote repository, and alternatively, if somebody else creates a branch on the remote repository, how do we pull them down? So we have covered all these topics, and we also looked at the two important commands, which is git fetch and git pull. Remember that you can use these interchangeably, but git pull will update your local branch with the files, whereas git fetch will bring in the changes and it will not update the files until you run a git pull. So in essence, when you run a git pull, it first runs a git fetch and then it runs a git merge, which ultimately merges those files into your local repository. In the next video, we will look at what a git merge is and how do we merge two different branches. So let's say developer A works on some changes, developer B works on some changes, and merging both of their work into one particular branch. So we will look at that in the next video. So I will see you in the next one.